week we celebrate School Choice Week, and it certainly is something to be celebrated. Across the country, school choice has been an abundant source of opportunity and force for good, lifting the life prospects of millions of students. And it's important to recognize at the outset that for a particular group of people across this country, school choice exists to the fullest extent. And those are families who are fortunate enough to have the financial means to create choices for themselves by moving into a community that has good public schools or by sending their kids to private schools. This form of school choice exists in all of the 50 states. But when it comes to everyone else, there is a stark difference among the 50 states. You see, there are some states that have decided that school choice should be available not just for some, but for everyone. And so, for example, you have states like Florida that have offered a variety of different school choice options. In fact, Florida is ranked #1 in the country when it comes to educational freedom, and not coincidentally, also ranks near the top when it comes to performance of their kids, ranked among the states across the country. But then there are other states that have opted to have a two-tiered education system, where they say, we will have school choice for those that can afford it, but everyone else, they say, we're going to tell you where you'll send your child to school. You'll have one option, and they will go to that school, whether your child is learning or not, whether they're learning how to do math or not, whether they're learning how to read or not, whether they're being prepared for success in life or not. This is the two-tiered education system that prevails in far too many states in this country, and perhaps nowhere more so than in my home state of California, where it has become a business model, a perverse business model of keeping kids trapped in failing schools, which each year is further entrenched by politicians and the special interests that support them. And no individual personifies this two-tiered education system more than the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Soon after taking office, Governor Newsom enacted an aggressive anti-school choice, anti-parent, anti-student agenda that went after charter schools and was condemned by civil rights groups like the NAACP and the Urban League. And then, after the COVID-19 shutdown began, Newsom and the California legislature went even further, trying to reduce the number of options that parents had from 1 to 0. At the beginning of the shutdown, with schools not operating at all, many lacked even a distance learning option. So parents started enrolling their students in charter schools that already had well-developed, personalized learning models. Newsom and the California legislature passed a bill to stop this, to defund these charters, to deny them funding for any new students so that kids would remain trapped in schools that weren't even offering Zoom school at the time. In the months ahead, Newsom and his allies in California realized that the COVID shutdown presented an opportunity to further entrench their business model of keeping kids trapped in failing schools without even having to run schools at all the while taking in billions and billions of extra dollars in funding. California would have the longest school shutdown of any state in the country. Newsom, as governor, assured California was 50th out of the 50 states in resuming in-person instruction. He claimed again and again that it was necessary to keep schools closed for the safety of students, but he knew that wasn't true. The reason we know that he knew it wasn't true is that at the same time, he was sending his own kids to in-person private school. This, by the way, is a pattern across the country, where some of the most strident anti-school choice politicians embrace school choice for themselves. President Biden, Vice President Harris, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, as well, of course, as Newsom, all fight against education options for families while enrolling their own students in private schools. The consequences of California's school shutdown, as well as other states that kept their kids out of school for far too long, are starting to come into focus. The National Assessment of Education Progress, a test administered by the Department of Education, released scores in the fall of 2022 showing that students in California had a 5-point drop in reading and a 7-point drop in math. Now, California already had among the worst education outcomes in the country. Before COVID, we ranked 49th out of 50 when it came to education outcomes for kids in low-income communities. And now, thanks to the longest school shutdowns in the country, those achievement gaps have been widened significantly. And this doesn't even account for all of the other dimensions of the harm that was done to kids in terms of their mental health, in terms of their social development, and so much more. And we have so much work to do now to try, in as much as we can, to help students recover from learning loss and to get back on the road they need to pursue their goals and to have success in life. The good news, though, is that the experience of the last few years has catalyzed a movement of parents across the country that is starting to develop into a renaissance in school choice, as we are seeing more and more pro-school choice, pro-kid, pro-parent legislation pass in states all across the country. Now, California has been an exception, and if anything, there has been a retrenchment as those who are currently in power see the threat that this movement of parents proposes or presents to their business model. But as we pause for a moment this week to celebrate and commemorate School Choice Week, I would want to offer a few ideas for the forms of school choice that this movement of parents can be channeled into. The first is choice within the traditional public education system, which isn't as discussed as much in the context of school choice, but which is very important and very powerful. So this means, number one, allowing schools within a district to have the freedom to present different types of offerings, different types of schools, such as vocational schools or immersion schools, in order to serve different types of students and to cater to the learning modalities of different types of students. And then allowing enrollment freedom within a district so that parents can choose a school within the school district that is right for them, as well as offering the option of transferring to another school district if there's a school in that district that serves their child better. Even in California, where we have among the worst school choice offerings in the country, one of the few options that does exist is called the District of Choice program, which enables families to transfer into a neighboring school district. And a study by the state's nonpartisan legislative analysts showed that for students who participated in the District of Choice program and transferred to a neighboring school district, their education outcomes improved. But not only that, the districts that they were transferring out of realized they need to take action to prevent students from leaving. And so they started offering new courses. They started offering AP courses, and the level of achievement in their schools improved as well. That is the beauty of school choice, is that it lifts all boats. And as we develop more programs for choice within the traditional public education system, it should be coupled with ease of enrollment, transparency to parents as far as what options are available, easy websites where you can see the schools that exist within a district and can see your enrollment options. There are many districts across the country that have developed these platforms and that have served students and families very well. The second form of choice that is continuing to expand across this country is charter schools, which are about 30 years old now in the United States. And what charters do is they essentially flip the typical education paradigm on its head, where they enable a great degree of freedom to school leaders to run the school however they see fit, and free the charter school from the constraints of the state's education code. So they're far less regulated, there are far fewer mandates. But in turn, charters are not assigned students like your typical neighborhood school is. They have to attract students to proactively enroll, and then not only that, but then they get reviewed every few years and assessed on the basis of their learning outcomes, and that determines whether the school will continue to operate. Now, this combination of innovation and accountability has a tremendous track record after just a few decades in existence. For example, one study by Stanford Center for Research on Education Outcomes showed that after 4 years in a charter, urban students learn about 50% more than demographically similar students in traditional public schools. Or New Orleans, in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, became a 100% charter district. And you saw test scores, graduation, dropout rates, college-going rates, independent studies, all showing that the city's schools have doubled or tripled their effectiveness over the course of a decade. So the charter schools are another key tool in the school choice toolkit and should continue to be encouraged as an option for parents and families outside of the traditional public education system, although it is important to note that charters are public schools. They are free. They have to have a blind admission system that is non-preferential, where if they're oversubscribed, then they're subject to a lottery. A third form of choice, then, is opting out of the public education system altogether. Now, it should be noted again that this right does exist in every state across the country, but the means to do so only exists for a certain segment of society. And so again, it's the Gavin Newsoms of the world that have the ability to withdraw their kids, if they so choose, from the public education system. But a lot of families just don't have the financial resources to do that, even if they believe that that is the option that is right for their kids. So what you're seeing to solve this problem and to tear down this two-tiered education system and have one where school choice is open to all is many states are passing legislation to create education savings accounts or other mechanisms where funding follows the child, so that you take the amount of state funding that is given to per pupil. In some California districts, this is over $24,000 per pupil, and at least give a portion of that to the parent to send their child to a private school or to hire a tutor or to find the option that is right for them. And it should also be noted, by the way, that protecting homeschooling is now more important than ever. We have a wonderful homeschool community in the district and the communities that I represent, and given the experience of public education in California and across this country in recent years, you've seen by some estimates homeschooling double just over the last few years. And this is an option that needs to be available to every family in this country as a matter of right and as a matter of giving parents the ability to control the education of their child. So those are just a few of sort of the exciting things that we see going on across this country in at least some states when it comes to expanding school choice, to having not a two-tiered education system, but one where opportunities are available for all. I actually worked as a high school teacher in inner city Los Angeles, where I worked on a direct level, on a small scale, to try to close the achievement gap for my students. I now am honored to have been appointed to the Education and Workforce Committee here in the House of Representatives, where I'm going to be working to do that on a larger scale, to expand school choice in as much as we can, and to pursue the goal of assuring that every child in this country has the opportunity for the education they